Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever felt like your projects are actually running you, maybe waking up in a cold sweat about a looming deadline or some endless bottleneck, well, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to look at project management, but not as this single, rigid path that you're just forced to march down. Instead, we're treating it like a diverse, highly dynamic toolkit. I mean, think about it. You wouldn't use a hammer to drive in a screw, right? In the exact same way, choosing the right framework is so often the literal difference between a project's spectacular success and a really frustrating failure. So we're going to systematically break down the core arguments and the practical applications of the most powerful methodologies out there today. Okay, let's dive into this and check out our roadmap for today. First, waterfall, linear and sequential. Second, agile, flexible and iterative. Third, lean and Six Sigma. Fourth, Lean Six Sigma via DMAIC. And finally, number 5, selecting your ideal approach. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, waterfall, linear, and sequential. So this one was actually created way back in the 1970s for physical engineering disciplines, things like manufacturing and construction. And the core argument of waterfall is really all about order. It is strictly linear and sequential. You can think of it literally like a waterfall, starting at the very top of a mountain and traveling straight down to the bottom. In this approach, the criteria you use to measure quality, the expectations, the resources, the goals, all of that is clearly defined right at the very beginning. You absolutely must complete one stage entirely before you can even think about starting the next one. The whole assumption here is that your initial parameters are highly unlikely to change. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly when you'd want to use waterfall. Imagine you're catering an event on a super strict budget. When resources are that incredibly tight, you absolutely cannot afford to make sudden changes, or worse, waste food. So you use a waterfall approach. You confirm the exact number of guests first. Then you clearly define the menu, you get absolute approval on all the items and the costs, and only then do you order those unreturnable ingredients. The traditional method simply won't let the client make changes to the menu once that order's been placed. By thinking through the entire project up front, you set yourself up for success when making changes later on is just too expensive. Moving right along to section 2, agile, flexible and iterative. But let's be real for a second. What happens when plans don't actually go according to plan? Because they rarely do. Emerging in the 1990s to keep up with the software industry's demand for super fast delivery, Agile is a framework built entirely for managing uncertainty. Honestly, Agile is more of a mindset than just a rigid series of steps. Instead of forcing you to wait for one phase to completely wrap up before starting the next one, Agile project phases actually overlap. The work is highly collaborative and iterative, and it gets completed in these short chunks of time, usually about 1 to 4 weeks, which are called sprints. The whole goal here is to gather regular client feedback by delivering small, working pieces of the project early. This lets the team pivot and adapt quickly as changes inevitably pop up. Okay, let's ground this in a real-world scenario. Imagine your team is building a brand new website. Instead of going into a cave and waiting 6 months to reveal the fully finished site, you use agile sprints. So in your very first sprint, you build and launch just the main homepage so it's out there and ready for the public. Then, while that's live, your subsequent sprints focus on building out, say, the company blog or maybe the online booking features. You are constantly releasing things, getting feedback on what's working and what isn't, and adjusting your very next move based on that real data. So the crucial point really comes down to this contrast. Sticking with our website example, waterfall would demand an early scope lock. That means the entire website has to be completely finished and perfect before anyone ever sees it. It keeps costs heavily controlled, sure, but it risks a massive launch that totally misses the mark with users. Agile, on the flip side, utilizes a sprint-based schedule and an iterative scope. It basically assumes upfront that the client might not have a perfect picture in mind at the start. That allows the team to continuously adapt the final product and the costs based on real-world testing and ongoing user feedback. Which brings us to section 3, Lean and Six Sigma. Now, while Agile and Waterfall kind of dictate how we sequence our tasks, Lean and Six Sigma focus heavily on deep process optimization, rigorous quality control, and the relentless reduction of waste. Let's start with Lean. This actually originated in the manufacturing world, and its core argument is beautifully simple but wildly effective. Do more with less. It's entirely focused on removing waste from within an operation. By tackling dysfunctions and optimizing every single step of a process, you ensure that only true value is being added at each phase of production. But to do more with less, you kind of need to know what you're trying to get rid of, right?
Lean methodology specifically targets 8 distinct types of waste. We're talking defects, excess processing, overproduction, waiting, inventory, transportation, motion, and non-utilized talent. And what actually causes all this waste? Well, usually it boils down to foundational dysfunctions, things like poor documentation, inefficient design, a lack of process standards, or honestly, just plain old bad communication within the team. To combat all that waste, Lean uses something called the 5S quality tool. It's essentially a method for extreme workplace organization and housekeeping. It breaks down into these 5 steps. First, sort, removing all the unneeded items so you literally only have the bare essentials. Next, set in order, arranging what you do need logically so anyone can find it. Then, shine, keeping the workspace perfectly clean every single day. Standardize, performing the process the exact same way every single time. And finally, sustain, building the discipline to make these procedures a permanent habit. Doing this achieves the absolute smallest possible amount of wasted time and material.
Now let's contrast that Lean approach with Six Sigma. While Lean is all about streamlining a process by taking out the trash, essentially, Six Sigma is a methodology focused strictly on reducing variation. It does this by finding highly measurable aspects of a product, like time, cost, or quantity, and then rigorously inspecting them to reject anything that doesn't meet an exceptionally high standard. Now, what's really interesting here is where that name actually comes from. Six Sigma originates from statistics. For a process to achieve Six Sigma status, it basically means the items or processes have to hit an unbelievable 99.9996% quality standard. That is wild. It leaves almost zero room for variation or defects. Any process that creates an unacceptable product under this standard simply has to be improved upon, period. To actually achieve that near-perfect standard, teams rely on 7 key principles. This involves always focusing on the customer, deeply understanding exactly how the work actually gets done, making processes flow smoothly, reducing waste, stopping defects by completely removing variation, involving your team collaboratively, and arguably most importantly, approaching every bit of improvement activity in a highly systematic way. Let's look at Section 4, Lean Six Sigma via DMAIC. So we have Lean to streamline things, and we have Six Sigma to measure and reject variations. Why not just use both? Lean Six Sigma builds quality into processes right from the start and uses those strict Six Sigma standards to inspect and test the products at the end. To visualize this, imagine you're brought into a massive travel company. Because of a recent huge sales promotion, their customer service wait times have absolutely surged to 30 minutes. Your goal is to use Lean Six Sigma to streamline this mess and get the average wait time down to under 10 minutes. How do you systematically attack a massive bottleneck like that? Let's see how this builds using the DMAIC or DMAIC process, which is the core strategy for Lean Six Sigma improvement. It stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. First, we define the goal, reducing wait times to under 10 minutes. Next, we measure current performance by gathering hard, objective data on customer volume and seasonal variations. Then we analyze that data to find the gaps. For instance, your analysis might clearly show that staffing is completely inadequate on specific high-traffic days. Only after finding that out do you improve the process by implementing solutions, like entirely modifying the staffing schedules. And finally, you control the process by putting strict monitoring and documentation in place, ensuring the company doesn't slowly slide right back to those 30-minute wait times.
And finally, Section 5, selecting your ideal approach.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but here is the ultimate takeaway. There is absolutely no single perfect prescription for how to execute a project. Project management is an art. It's the art of selecting and very often hybridizing the exact right tools for the specific needs of your project, your team, and your organization. Just look at how a massive company like Google handles this stuff. They do not lock themselves into one little box. Their engineering teams might use agile sprints to rapidly develop and release product code, totally embracing change and constant feedback. Meanwhile, their customer service teams might deploy Lean Six Sigma to deeply analyze the user experience and permanently destroy bottlenecks. And yet, for an internal project, like an annual compliance training where the deadline is fixed, the requirements are rigid, and completion is strictly mandatory, they will confidently use a traditional waterfall approach. They combine the frameworks to most efficiently meet the ultimate goal.
Understanding these frameworks gives you the power to confidently apply what works best. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Look at the biggest project going on in your life or your work right now. Are you trying to force it down a really rigid waterfall path when it actually desperately needs agile flexibility? Or are you maybe drowning in waste when a Lean Six Sigma DMAIC process could completely clear your bottleneck? Take a hard look at your workflow, choose your framework wisely, and go build something incredible. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.